I never planned on having a roommate, especially not one like Ryan. I was the kind of guy who liked things quiet, predictable. A decent 9 to 5, meal prepped Sundays, Netflix queues I never finished. I wasn't boring, I was safe, but when my landlord raised the rent unexpectedly, I had to make a choice through move out or find someone to split the cost. That's when Ryan showed up, a mutual friend connected us. I only knew two things. He was moving to the city for a new art fellowship, and he needed a place fast. So I said yes. I didn't know that decision would turn my entire world upside down. He walked in that first day with a worn leather duffel, ink-stained fingers, and a smile that made my chest do this weird twist I hadn't felt in years. "Hey," he said, like we'd known each other forever. And I just stood there, trying not to look too long, trying not to feel too much. Because Ryan, he was gifted, not just talented, not just handsome. He had this energy, unfiltered, wild, alive. And I was terrified of what that meant for me. Inciting incident, the first week passed like a quiet storm. He'd be up all night sketching in the kitchen or talking to himself while rearranging our living room like a madman with vision. I'd wake up to the smell of charcoal and coffee and him hunched over the dining table, shirtless, humming softly, completely in his world. And me? I just stand there pretending I was grabbing a banana or something, heart pounding like a drum solo I couldn't control. One night, he invited me to his gallery preview. His first big showing since moving. I almost said no. But something in his eyes made me say yes. That night, walking through the gallery, watching people surround his work, I saw him differently. Or maybe I just admitted something I'd been trying to bury. He was brilliant, magnetic, and I was completely overwhelmed. Afterward, we went out for drinks, just the two of us. And somewhere between the second beer and the midnight walk home, I caught him looking at me. Not just looking. Seeing. "You okay?" he asked. And I said yeah, but my heart was racing, my mind spinning, because for the first time, I realized this wasn't just admiration. I liked him, really liked him. And that terrified me. Rising action. Things started shifting after that night. Subtle things, his arm brushing mine in the hallway. Late night talks that lasted too long, inside jokes, shared playlists, him falling asleep on the couch next to me during movie marathons. We never talked about it, whatever it was, but it hung in the air like static, waiting for a spark. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, that I was reading too much into everything, that maybe this was just what friendship felt like after loneliness. But then there were moments. Like the time he asked me to pose for a sketch. "I need a subject with quiet energy," he said. And the way he said, like he was seeing something sacred in me I'd forgotten existed. Or the night the power went out and we sat in the dark with nothing but candles and truth spilling between us. "I don't really do labels," he'd said, voice soft. "I just connect with people, real ones." Then he looked at me. Really looked. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed wondering if he could hear my heart pounding through the walls. Wondering if he felt it too. Wondering what would happen if I told him. But fear is a quiet thief, and I let it steal my words. The thing about trying to hide your feelings when you live with the person is that you fail. Miserably. Ryan started picking up on things. Or maybe he always knew and I was the one catching up. Either way, the air between us was thick now, not uncomfortable, but charged, like everything we said was sitting on top of something unsaid. One Friday night, he brought home a canvas the size of our kitchen table and told me not to look until he was done. I tried to respect that, but curiosity is a hell of a drug. 3 days later, I came home early and he was gone. The tarp in the living room was pulled back just enough that I could see it. It was a portrait. Of me. But not just me. It was me as he saw me. Soft lines, tired eyes, slightly parted lips, like I was in the middle of saying something important and didn't know it. I stood there frozen, every breath catching in my throat. I didn't know what it meant. but I knew what I felt. When he came home that night, I had every intention of playing it cool. But the second I saw him, it all cracked. "You painted me?" I said. He didn't even flinch. "Yeah? Why?" He took a long breath, walked closer. "Because you matter to me." 4 words. That's all it took to split me open. "I don't know what this is," I whispered. "I just know I can't stop thinking about you." And then silence. He stepped even closer. Close enough that I could feel the heat from his skin. His voice barely above a whisper. "Then don't." Rising conflict, true. After that night, everything changed. But not in the way I expected. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. We just let it hang there. That moment. That almost. It was like we were both waiting for the other to decide if it was real. And that waiting started to ache. He'd still make me laugh in the mornings. Still sketch in the living room. But now there was this pull between us. A tension I couldn't shake. One night, I walked into the kitchen and found him sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "You okay?" I asked. He looked up slowly. "I don't know what you want from me." That stopped me cold. "What do you mean?" He shook his head. "I mean, 1 second you're looking at me like I'm your whole world. The next, you're hiding in your room like I'm dangerous." I didn't know what to say. Because he wasn't wrong. I was hiding from him. From myself, from the part of me that wanted something more, and was terrified to want it. "I've been here before," he said quietly. "Caring more than the other person? It wrecked me." That hurt to hear, because it meant he cared. "I'm not trying to hurt you," I said. Then stop running. I wish I could say I kissed him right then, that I stepped forward and everything made sense. But I didn't. I just stood there, still afraid, and he walked past me into his room and shut the door. Falling action, emotional realignment. The silence between us lasted 2 days. Longest 2 days of my life. I didn't eat. Barely slept. I couldn't even watch TV without thinking about what I should have done. The thing is, loving someone doesn't always come with a big moment. Sometimes it sneaks in quietly, and you don't even realize it until they're not speaking to you. I missed his laugh. I missed his stupid paint-stained hoodies. I missed him. That second night, I knocked on his door. He didn't answer. So I just opened it. He was lying on his side, headphones on, sketchpad resting on his stomach. He looked so calm, but I knew better. "Ryan," I said softly. He pulled off his headphones and sat up. "I was scared," I told him. "I still am," but he didn't interrupt. Just let me speak. "I've never had something like this before. Something real. Something that makes me feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff." A pause. "But I don't want to stand on the edge anymore." Ryan looked at me like he'd been waiting for those words, like a weight had been lifted off both our chests. "I've been scared too," he admitted, voice low and steady. "Not just of losing you, but of what happens if we actually try." I nodded. "Same here. But staying silent feels worse." We sat there for a long moment, the kind where words aren't needed. Just the sound of our breathing, the faint hum of the city outside our window. Then, almost without thinking, I reached out and touched his hand. It was electric, his fingers curled around mine, tentative but sure. In that instant, all the walls I'd built up inside me came crashing down. "I want to try," I whispered. His smile was soft, like a secret shared between two people who finally understood. Climax of breaking through the fear. That night wasn't about fireworks or dramatic decorations. It was quiet, real. We talked for hours. About our fears, our hopes, the past mistakes that made us guard our hearts so fiercely. And then, when the world felt still enough, I kissed him. Not rushed. Not desperate. Just gentle and sure, like this was where I was meant to be. His hands found my face, and suddenly everything felt right. Like we'd been orbiting each other forever and finally found the perfect place to collide. Resolution, a growing together. After that night, things changed. Not because everything was perfect, because it wasn't. There were moments of doubt, moments where fear still crept in. But there were also moments of pure joy. Ryan would wake me up with coffee and a silly drawing he made of us. I'd cook dinner, and he'd tell me stories about his art school days. We started building something new, a connection that was messy and beautiful and ours. He helped me see myself through his eyes, kind, worthy, lovable. And in return, I became the safe place where he could be himself without hesitation. Closing thoughts. I used to think having a roommate meant just sharing space. But sharing my life with Ryan taught me something else entirely. Sometimes, the person who moves into your apartment can also move into your heart. Love doesn't always come easy. It's messy, uncertain, and often scary, but when it's real, it's worth every pounding heartbeat. If you're watching this and feeling the same way about someone in your life, maybe your roommate, your coworker, or your best friend, remember this, you're not alone. And sometimes all it takes is a little courage to let love in. A few months passed. The apartment felt different now, warmer, like the walls themselves had softened, holding the memories we were slowly collecting together. Sunday mornings tangled in blankets, late night talks under the kitchen light, quiet evenings filled with music and laughter. Ryan's art began to change too. He painted more often and more freely. His strokes felt bolder, his colors more alive. One afternoon, I came home and found a new canvas propped up near the window. Two silhouettes sitting side by side, surrounded by a wash of deep reds and soft blues. It was us. I didn't say anything. I just walked over, wrapped my arms around him from behind, and rested my chin on his shoulder. "I think I finally get it," I said. He smiled. "Get what?" "What it means to really see someone and let them see you back." He turned to face me, his eyes warm with something that needed no explanation. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit before. This wasn't just a story about falling in love with my roommate. This was a story about finding home in another person, climactic reflections, emotional growth. Before Ryan, I lived life on autopilot, routine, safety, emotional distance dressed up as independence. But loving him rewired something in me. I began to feel things more deeply, speak more honestly, choose presence over protection. We didn't have everything figured out, and we still don't. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the future, not because it was guaranteed, but because I knew I wouldn't be facing it alone. Final scene, a shared horizon. One night, we stood on the rooftop of our building, just the two of us and the stars. It was quiet except for the hum of the city below. He slipped his fingers through mine. "Do you ever think about where we'd be if we never became roommates?" he asked. I let the question settle. "I think I'd still be asleep," I said, "and missing the best part of my life." He leaned in and kissed me, soft and slow like a promise. And in that moment, under the vast, open sky, I knew this wasn't temporary. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a phase. This was love, and it had found me in the most unexpected way. Closing thoughts at the message to the viewer. Maybe your story isn't the same as mine. Maybe you're still trying to figure out if what you feel is real, or if they feel it too. But here's what I know. Sometimes the people who crash into your life the loudest are the ones your soul's been waiting for in silence. If your heart races when they're closey, if their louder stays with you longer than it should, if every day feels a little brighter just because they're in it. Don't ignore that. Lean into it, even if it's scary, even if it doesn't make sense, because love doesn't always knock. Sometimes it just moves in